Hello and welcome to Haste Hobbies. Today we will be looking at how to quickly prep, prime, and apply a protective sealant to a batch of miniatures, specifically in the context of preparing for the first scenario of Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Let's dive in. My first step is to use a hobby knife to cut away mold lines that are left over from the casting of the mini. You could use sanding twigs or files to shave away the mold lines. Whatever allows you to break up the mold line without leaving other undesirable marks on the mini. Right? You don't want to cut too deep or scratch too hard and obscure other detail or create new divots. I'll put links to different products that you could use in the description. For speed painting lots of minis, I'm not concerned with removing all trace of a mold line. My goal is to break it up sufficiently that after we paint the mini, the eye is not drawn to the mold line. Minis usually come from the factory with mold release agent on them. Think of that like non-stick spray for your cookware. It allows the minis to be easily removed from their molds, but it also prevents paint from sticking well to the mini. This should be removed before priming. Also, if you handle the mini a lot, it can get covered in skin oil, which will also prevent primer from adhering properly. So before priming, but after prepping a mini, I wash it with warm water and soap. If I use water that's too hot, the mini might start to bend and warp, and it may reharden in an undesirable pose. On the flip side, I can use hot water on some plastic materials to fix bent weapons and that sort of thing. I let the minis dry completely before priming, and if I'm in a hurry, I set up a fan and spin the minis around once in a while to get them dried off on all sides. For our batch priming step, I'm using large paint stirring sticks and sticky tack, blue tack, or poster putty, whatever you like to call it, and I'm sticking the minis to the paint stirrers with enough space between them for the spray paint to get in all the nooks and crannies. Next, I head out to a well-ventilated but poorly lit area and begin to prime. In this case, I'm using 5 spray paints. This is not necessary, but I was doing it to see how different undercoats would work with Citadel's contrast paints. I used gray, light gray, and white on some minis, light brown, cream, and white on another set of minis. I sprayed them in such a way as to create a gradient from dark to light, darkest on the underside of the mini and brightest on the top. This might be overkill, and the inaccuracy of the spray paint limits the nuance the effect of the zenithal shading can have on the mini, especially when compared with spraying on that zenithal shading with a airbrush, let's say. But I thought it was worth a test. Here's how the minis looked after they were zenithally primed. You can see the gradient here from light brown to cream. The transition to the white highlight is not very strong. And on these guys, you can see the light gray or darker gray to lighter gray. After the primer has cured, I apply a dry brush of white to all the minis. I'm using a soft bristled makeup brush, getting paint on it, then wiping most of the paint off on a paper towel before flicking the bristles up and down over the model. Using this method, we'll get paint on the highest points of the model, the most extreme edges, and this provides us with more contrast on our base coat. This is particularly helpful if you're going to use Citadel's contrast paint to paint these minis, as those paints are very transparent, and the brightened raised areas will show through. If you're going to use more opaque paints, this step won't do much for you, except perhaps give you an outline of where you'll want to apply layered highlights. However, if you are going to use very transparent paints, the highlights will show through, giving you varied brightness on the model quickly and easily. That's it for prepping and priming. Lastly, after the minis are painted, if you don't want all that effort to be in vain, they should be protected, especially if they are game pieces and other people are going to handle them. I suggest sealing your minis with a varnish. I'm using Testra's Dull Coat to seal my minis with a matte finish. There's also gloss and satin varnishes that can protect your minis as well, if you want a different finish on the model. I put the painted minis back on the paint stirring sticks and applied Testra's dull coat like I would a spray paint, being careful not to overspray. Make sure your minis are completely dry before you apply a varnish over them. I gave my minis a full 24 hours to dry. Testra's dull coat gives off a nasty odor, so I left my minis outside in the shade to dry. If you want to really ensure your minis are protected, you could wait for the first layer of Testra's dull coat to dry and apply a second coat. That wraps up how I prepped, primed, and sealed these minis from Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Here's the final product. I will detail how I speed painted these minis in upcoming videos. Prepping, priming, painting, and sealing all 29 of these minis for the first Batman Gotham City Chronicles scenario took me about 504 minutes, or about 17 minutes a model, and I'm working on getting faster. If you want to receive notifications when these videos go up, subscribe and click the bell icon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.